Good afternoon. So, as I was walking and reading comments from people about the idea of traveling to Nepal, I've got questions about, is Nepal safe? And I thought to myself, safe is relatively subjective. As a woman who travel alone, I can vouch for Nepal being really safe. In all different aspects, I think it would be quite interesting to share you a little bit about practical information that you may find it to be useful. Who would have thought perhaps one day you'll get to visit Nepal and see the Himalayan range by yourself. The first information you have to know, Nepal is a landlocked country between India and China, in between all of that, Bangladesh, close to Pakistan as well. The currency that Nepalese are using is called Nepalese rupees. It's not the same as Indian rupees, so they have different conversion to the US dollar, but also they use Nepalese language. It sounds similar to Hindi, but not so much like Hindi. The writing is also like, it looks similar for a foreigner like me who don't quite understand both. There are 3 different visas that you can choose for traveler between 15 days, 30 days, and 90 days. I paid for 90 days visa for about $100.
How many days?
90. Yeah. Whereas for 15, I think it's about $40, and 30 days was something like 60. Differences in between is not a lot, but like if you're someone like me coming from Asia and the currency is not as strong, it's actually quite a lot. Money. I think it's quite easy to exchange money here. Basically, there are 2 different cities that I would highly suggest where you would change your money. First being Kathmandu for sure, and exchange it at a bank instead of money changer, because I find that the bank has better rate, but you have to bring your passport. Whereas the second one in Pokhara, there are a couple of banks, but it seemed like, and based on my own experience, they don't open all the time. I mean, the time that they open was 10 to 3 or 11 to 2, I think, for specifically for the money changer. So the most convenient one is for sure the money exchange, but the rate is so bad. And of course, the other option that can be done is through ATM, even though usually bank will charge, the ATM would charge 500 rupees for one-time withdrawal, and that's about $5. If you would like to withdraw money through ATM, get it all together, 10,000 or 13,000 or even more. You don't have to pay multiple times in terms of ATM fees. Mobile phones. When it comes to mobile phone, I paid $10, I think, 1,000 something rupees. So basically, when you arrive at the airport, there are 2 different, providers, right? Providers, first being Ncell and the other being Entel. Both offers different package. Ncell is basically private company, if I'm not mistaken. So first you have to pay for the SIM card itself, and you can choose as to how many gigabytes you would like to pay for the package, and as to like how many days as well. I paid for Entel, which is the government, I think, state-owned company. The SIM card was free. However, it was 20 gigabytes something for $10. They require passport. To be honest, the signal isn't the best. I don't know about Ncell. Throughout the time, it's not the best signal, and then especially in villages area. Anyway, a lot of places, accommodations provide Wi-Fi, although sometimes they're not reliable. But if you don't really need internet, I don't think it would be a huge thing to really worry about. For your information, there are 3 different important seasons in terms of low season, high seasons in Nepal. First being October to November, which is the highest season because the weather is nice. First, it's being autumn. It's cold, but the most important part is the sky is very clear. So every trekkers would go and come to Nepal during that day, during that time, because they would go for trekking and be able to see the mountains clearly, whereas the second one being March to April, it's the second best time to visit. This is the springtime. If you have the time in between, you can choose either October to November or March to April. Whereas for low season, during the monsoon, lots of rain, wet, clouds, or even obscure mountains and views, these are happening during January to September. So I came to Nepal in October, end of October, and I saw a lot of people and travelers, and especially November, because I think that's just the season. Now in December, it seems like it's starting to be off season soon enough because it's getting really cold and winter is here. There are a couple of different websites, useful one that I would refer and go back to. I'm not sort of a traveler who would like to do paid things, but if you are lacking of time, it's important to research far before arriving, and if you don't mind paying for certain travel guides or travel groups, you can pay for that, because then you don't have to research, you don't have to think about what to do, where to go, things like that, practical things that has been handled by all of these people that you give the money for. And daily costs. I am a budget traveler, so there are 3 different variations as to how much you can spend for the day. But at the end of the day, it depends on you. To me, it depends on me. Sometimes I will splurge on food or accommodation, especially if I have someone to share it with, which is incredible because most times I paid full by myself, like taxis. If I'm really tired and I just don't want to get on to bus, which is very rare. Accommodation I can't really share because in smaller cities or places or villages, there is no hostel, there is no single bed or double bed, it's just a room. We can sustain for $50, less than $50 per day, which is to me still a lot. You can manage for a dorm bed if you are in Pokhara, big cities like that, or Kathmandu, and you would get a dorm bed, sometimes decent, sometimes not, but you can even find something like $10 or less. Whereas budget hotel in Kathmandu, it may cost between 15 to 25, whereas dinner in Kathmandu, dinner, breakfast, or lunch, because a lot of the times this accommodation do not provide breakfast. Meals in Kathmandu, if you're staying in Tamil area, it's so easy to spend money, especially when I was in Pokhara and in Kathmandu, in Tamil area specifically, you are surrounded by so many cafes and restaurants that is totally catered for tourists. So first you have to pay 10% of tax, usually it's service charge, and then 13% of government fee or tax. So that's quite a lot of additional. You don't tip. 10% service charge is already considered as a tip. But also at the same time, it's how you manage to budget that. What I would do usually, I would eat in between. So instead of 3, I would go for twice a day. If I'm really splurging, I would go for snack or here and there. There are staple food in Nepal such as chow mein or momos or samosas that you can find everywhere, and even chai, milk tea, masala milk tea, so you don't have to be so hungry. But also, if you are prepared for mid-range and top end, you can spend between $50 to $150 per day, or even above $150. There are plenty of resorts in places like Kathmandu for sure, or even in Pokhara. The easiest way to figure out is to go through tours if you don't have much time to explore or to decide. But if you have a lot of time, then definitely through booking.coms, I have the link below, Airbnb, if you want to look for homestay, things like that. I've talked to different travelers, and a lot of them who've been to India would say that the value that we pay here in Nepal is not as much. And I would say I may have to agree, because even though I haven't been to India, sometimes I would find myself thinking the value for what you pay is not a lot, because in other places tourism is probably more developed, and so you would have a lot of alternatives in between for accommodation, food, and everything. But yeah, remember that Nepal is still under developing. Every single dollars that you spend on locals will have and stretch out for them for their lives. I think arriving in Nepal, there are a couple of places that people usually arrive to. First being the main airport in Kathmandu, which is called as Sri Bhuvan International Airport, and that's where I arrived at. And lots of prepaid taxi, lots of even like bargaining taxi. A lot of ease in terms of you would have ATM, money changer, SIM card. Yeah, and the other one is the Indian border, close to Lumbini, the place that I visit. So yeah, those two are usually the area where people would arrive in Nepal. After all of that practical information, if I would ask myself, is Nepal safe? I would say really safe. Lots of infrastructure are still trying to be built. Roads unpaved, but buses are quite okay. The way they drive here is mental. In terms of safety, when it comes to people, I would say people are not deceptive. That's what I like about it. Even though places in main area like Tamil or Kathmandu or in the airport, which is very common, you would be encountered and ask for things, but at the same time generally the people are so kind and nice. Safety in terms of transportation, if you have more budget to hire taxi or private jeep, I think you'd be fine. Anyway, this is a bit like roughly just the general idea about Nepal. I hope you find this video to be useful. I hope to see you again next time. Bye.